Welcome to Succession Podcast, a podcast by Lane Brothers Investment Counsel. Follow a founder on his journey to successfully transition his 3-decade-old practice to the next generation of advisors and clients. Investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.
Welcome to the Succession Podcast. My name is Joe Allen, Wealth Advisor with Lane Brothers Investment Counsel, and I'm joined by
Kevin Lane, Founder, Senior Wealth Advisor.
And I'm Megan Lane, Associate Wealth Advisor and Director of Operations.
On today's episode, we want to dig right into the realization that a succession plan was needed. So we're going to talk to Kevin about that. So Kevin, let's jump right in. So what was that trigger? When did you realize that a succession plan was needed for the firm?
Good question, Joe. So I think 2014 was a pivotal year. I was the survivor of a great divorce, interesting process. And I think that was the wake-up call that we had to think in terms of retirement and planning and what the firm should be doing over the next decade to follow. And then it was crystallized, I think, in 2016 when we were at a TD Ameritrade workshop over in San Diego. And one of the workshops was a firm that specialized in succession planning. And he used the example of somebody who got a very serious diagnosis and for medical purposes had to accelerate a succession scenario. And that's never a good way to have to react to something quickly. So that's sort of, I think, set the importance of us to get serious about it, and we've started that formal process in 2018.
So at what point did you start to get really serious about the due diligence steps that you needed to start taking to explore what your succession options were?
Yeah, so in 2018, we got the opportunity to work with a large firm that specializes in succession planning and mergers and acquisitions for RIA firms on deal flows below 20 million. They're sort of best in breed. They probably do 15 to 20 deals a month, and they do upwards of 1,000 valuations a year on RIA firms. So I had the fortune of, by luck, working with the founder of that firm. And that's where they started to put together the buy and sell to take out some passive shareholders, my siblings that were involved with me in the early years, and set the stage for the existing shareholders in buy-sell agreements, et cetera. And while we're going through that process, we were approached by another large RIA firm that was specializing in rolling up and doing mergers and acquisitions. And we had to give that some serious consideration because the numbers were enticing. But on further inspection of that, it was really decided that it wasn't really in our client's best interest nor my best interest, because usually those firms don't want the principals to stay around very long, and I still want it to work. And so the founder of the succession firm we were working with said, there's it's not a bad option if you're willing to leave the stage and go on and do something else. And I just really was not. So the preferable option was to look to board second-generation advisors, affectionately known as G2s, into the process and make sure that we can build a better team for a lasting and enduring next chapter for the firm. So that's basically started in 2018 and took us down the path. And we'll get around to announcing who the first one was and the second and the third ones to follow. So,
yeah, absolutely. So you had, there's a lot of options, and you talked about maybe actually some of the most common options being just sell the firm, right? And that's a quick exit. Sometimes that's the required method, especially if there's health issues or something like that. It doesn't sound like that was your preferred method. So when you considered the different options, how did you react to some of those options? You already mentioned really thinking about what's in the best interest of the client, but what was some of your initial reactions of what you were seeing others in the industry do versus what you ultimately wanted to do?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, it was wanting to still stay engaged and active in the business, and also what I think was in the client's best interest. In that particular firm that approached us, they were going to raise the fees immediately, which sort of subsidized the purchase of the check they were willing to write. Well, that's not necessarily in our client's best interest, right? So when you start to peel back some of the layers of the onion, it just was not palatable for our clients' primary and my own personal goals and desires to stay engaged and work longer. So the logical thing was to find the G2s and bring them on board, make sure people are properly trained, cross-trained, and I think that just makes sense to continue the legacy of the clients that we built, the clients to follow, and then oftentimes, many of the cases, the kids and family of those clients.
So once you figured out the route that you really wanted to focus on, you found out all your options through your due diligence process. What were the steps that you needed to take as far as figuring out, was this genuinely the best decision you saw for the firm, and how did you go about that?
Yeah, it's a good point. So as you know very well, we were finding ourselves in need of additional administration and operational support, and that's when I had the conversation with you to think about this industry. You know, we need more women in the industry, and we certainly needed more youth in the shop, and you agreed to go down that path as a trial run, and in 2019, so you were our first G2 on board, and knock on wood, as you completed your business degree and moved back to Arizona to work with us, you were very happy. We were certainly happy, and you're making this a career, so we think that's a great thing. I think the other important addition to this process was our affiliation with Carson Wealth Partners in 2020, because they brought to the table a whole mergers and acquisition group that allowed us to go down the path when Joe Allen and I were introduced by a mutual acquaintance to even explore whether it was an option and what that might look like. And that's the nice thing about the mergers and acquisition group there, is they do all that investment banking work at no additional charge, because they're taking the art of the long view. Ultimately, new assets benefits everyone in the long run, and that's just basically how it worked. And I think if we didn't have that affiliation with Carson, it would be less of a value proposition to entice Joe Allen or Brian Scott or the others down the road to even consider joining a small independent firm. We like the fact that we can do hands-on support on a local basis, but we have the backup of a large headquarters and the centralization of compliance and marketing and investment and research and trading and the technology stack, which is really important. So it really kind of just all flowed in that process. So we couldn't be more pleased that 5 years into the start of the official succession, I think we're well on our way to a game plan and having it mapped out.
So G2, by G2 you mean second generation, meaning the new and improved version, right? So
always new and
usually
improved.
things get better with it. With
Always
time.
new and improved, absolutely.
Okay. All right, I just want to clarify what you meant by G2.
Yeah. Some people think it's a plane, but no, it's G2. Well, I think this is probably a good wrap up for episode 3. I noticed you two had your own water bottles. In my day, we got our water from a water fountain.
Okay,
Okay,
boomer.
If you're a client and you have any questions or comments, please feel free to reach out to any of our team members directly. Or if you're an advisor or in the industry and you'd like to have a conversation, you can reach us at info@lanebrothers.com.
Thank you so much for joining us for another episode. Kevin already gave a spoiler alert for our next episode, which is introducing you to the very first G2 of the firm. So join us next time. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Find all the Succession episodes on lanebrothers.com/podcast. If you found any portion of this episode helpful, please like or share it with a friend. The opinions voiced in Succession with Kevin Lane, Joe Allen, and Megan Lane are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. To determine what may be appropriate for you, consult with your attorney, accountant, financial, or tax advisor prior to investing. Guests on Succession are not affiliated with CWM LLC investment advisory services offered through CWM LLC, an SEC registered investment advisor. Carson Partners, a division of CWM LLC, is a nationwide partnership of advisors.